Thanks for coming out. So this is a really exciting day for us. We have been working towards this day for months, not weeks, months. So at the beginning of COVID, this was something that Craig Cipriano, our president of buses, started talking about early on, that we're going to have to come up with some innovative solutions to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect our bus operators now and in the future. So you all will probably remember we took a bunch of steps early on. We made sure that there was distance between riders and operators. We put plexiglass up in a lot of our facilities. We made sure that operators got the PPE they needed, masks and gloves. They've now got seat covers as well. We made sure that we moved quickly on rear door boarding so that we were minimizing the interaction between folks boarding the bus and walking by the operator and engaging with the operator when the pandemic was on the rise. So we took a lot of steps early on to make sure that we were doing all we could to protect our operators. But again, from the beginning, Craig was talking about what are we going to do going forward? How are we going to behave in our new normal to make sure that we continue to protect our operators? And so today is the culmination of many, many weeks of really innovative work to figure out what we could put around the operator to make sure that that person's protected. And there were a bunch of different iterations, and I'll let Craig go through them, but you know, this is not as simple as it seems. You would think you could just sort of wrap that area, but of course we need the operator to have line of sight. We need them to be able to see everything they need to be seeing when the bus is on the move. We need to make sure that we're minimizing glare that can happen both at night and with the sun. So this is an exciting day for us. Once we're finished, I hope that everyone will be able to take a look at the buses and see what we've done. It has been an honor to watch Craig work so closely with his labor partners and with his operators to make sure that we got this to a place where people are feeling comfortable and safer. So now that we've found the solutions that we think will work for our buses, now we're off to the implementation phase. And so this is going to take a while, no surprise. But through the summer and into the fall, you know, as you are out riding our buses, you will see more and more buses have these barriers in place. And as we can get the barrier implemented, it'll be off on the road. So we're not going to hold back. We're going to make sure that we're protecting as many operators as we possibly can. And look, what part of this is we've got to get back to a place where we're able to collect fares. I think everyone knows it's no surprise that the MTA's financial situation is dire. I think Chairman Foy called it the other day a 4-alarm fire, which it sounds like a 5-alarm fire if that's possible to me. So look, collecting fares isn't gonna get us to the other side of that. We need a lot more. We continue to work closely with and call on Washington to get us the assistance that we need, because the reality is without assistance from Washington, we're gonna face some significant challenges. So we're gonna continue to do that, but collecting fares is part of it too. So we have to make sure that we're balancing safety with collecting fares, but starting in August at some point, we're going to start opening up that fare box again. And we'll work closely with our labor partners to make sure that we do it in a way that makes people comfortable, to make sure that we're dipping our toe in the water before we bring it back fully, but we need to get to that point in August, and so that hard work will start now too. So again, thank you for coming, and it's a pleasure to introduce Craig Cipriano. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. So since the start of Phase 1, I'm pleased to see how many New Yorkers have embraced buses to get around the city. We continue to see strong ridership in Brooklyn and the Bronx specifically, and I look forward to welcoming back additional customers as we progress with reopening. Today, we have different prototype bus operator barriers for you to see on both local and express buses. One is a polycarbonate slider. The other is a sliding vinyl curtain. The full-length polycarbonate slider is being installed on local buses next to the bus operator compartment. They manually slide to open when passengers board, and the vinyl curtains work very similar in the same manner. We'll be installing these protective barriers fleet-wide on 4,800 local buses by the fall, and starting this week, we'll be installing the sliding curtain on all 1,000 express buses. Customers will continue to board from the front, but cannot sit in the first row to ensure proper distancing from the operator. We continue to look for these immediate and long-term solutions to keep our employees and customers safe, working closely with manufacturers to add design elements that fit our specific needs. Like Sarah just said, the safety of our employees and our customers is our #1 priority. And I am grateful to our incredible workforce for their dedication to public service. They haven't wavered throughout this pandemic. To make our system safe as possible, we'll need the continued cooperation of our customers, and as you know, wearing a mask is required on all public transportation. Allow extra time for your commute, and please have patience. And I want to have a specific shout out to Earl and all the TWU labor partners and ATU labor partners who have worked collaboratively throughout this pandemic and on this design. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig, and thank you for reminding everyone about masks. Absolutely required on public transportation, in the subways, and on all buses. So please put that in your pieces and remind our riders that that's absolutely required. And now my pleasure to introduce Earl Phillips.
Good morning, all. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much, Craig. And today I'm here with heavy hearts because you know that during the pandemic, we have lost many brothers and sisters. It's my intention, as a leader of TW Local 100, Secretary Treasurer, to work with Sarah. I'm going to hold you and Craig to your words that you're saying that you're going to work with labor to make this happen. You know, this pandemic, as you know, do not discriminate. You know, I have taken down many of us. This is work in progress. These partitions is work in progress. We're going to work and we're going to observe as, you know, these partitions being built out, that they're doing the right thing to protect our bus operators. So thank you very much, and I'll sooner or later take some calls from the media. Thank you very much.
Okay, any questions? Questions? Yep.
Sarah, Antoine Lewis, Fox 5 News. You just mentioned that you will resume collecting in August. Can you just tell us what you believe you've lost as far as revenue goes since the non-collection affairs on the buses have happened?
Look, if you're just talking about buses specifically, look, I think it's, and Craig may want to address some of the specific numbers. I think it's hard. It's really hard to make that calculation, because of course, as we've continued to move people, we've had folks boarding from the back, and so they haven't really interacted with the fare box. But yet, on other, we've tried to collect fares. Obviously, we're collecting fares in the subway, so it depends on where you're specifically looking. But generally, above all, I mean, we've been hit hard across the board on ridership and on fare collection. That's not the only thing that's hit us hard. Obviously, there are costs that have been involved too. We're cleaning our buses 24/7. We're cleaning the system 24/7. We're cleaning our stations 24/7. That's added costs. And so as the costs have gone up and fares have gone down, it's been a perfect storm. So, any other questions? No? Oh, sorry, Dan.
I just wanted to ask about news today that Sally Librera will be stepping down as Vice President of Subways. You're now going to have an interim transit president. You're going to have an interim Subways VP.
Yep.
I understand you're going to have an acting COO, Pat Warren. Mm-hmm. Can we expect permanent leadership at the MTA when, or is the title of president of an operating agency going to go away, and we'll just have chief operating officers running each department?
I'm not sure I followed the second half of that question, but let me just say a few words about Sally.
I'll rephrase it then.
Okay.
Will there be an agency president going forward, or are we going to have permanent leadership, so there will be New York City Transit president, vice president of subways, or are we just going to have chief operating officers running these subways and buses?
Yeah, again, so it seems like you're saying, are we going to have permanent leadership, or are we going to have a permanent president? So yes, we're going to have permanent leadership, and I think that person will be a permanent president. So yes to both of your questions, and I don't know where the COO piece comes in, because that's never been something that we've talked about doing. So, but let me address your question about Sally. I am so grateful to Sally's leadership and to her service to this city and to this agency. And I'm sure Craig and Earl may want to as well say a few words about Sally. Her leadership has been unflapping. She has been a pillar of leadership and strength at Subways. She was my partner. She was my sister through some of the hardest moments that transit has ever gone through. And, I am more than a little heartbroken that she is leaving, but also quite happy for her, because after 16 years of public service to the MTA, she absolutely deserves a little bit of time with her family and a little bit of time to be thoughtful about what she'd like to do next. And so I'm incredibly grateful to her. We will miss her every day, but we are really grateful to her for her service and plan on making sure that she remains just a phone call away. But let me let Craig speak to it as well.
Sure. So, what I would say about Sally is that she's been a tremendous colleague for me specifically since I stepped into this role as head of buses for the last year. I think the performance that we've seen on Subways of lately, speaks for itself, as far as her tremendous leadership and vision that she provided to her Subways department. On a personal note, I wish her all the best, and I'm going to miss her. So I want to thank her.
And Sarah, just to follow up, you
I think they need you more than me, sir. Yeah, on behalf of TW Local 100 and its leadership, we wish Sally the best in her journey. This is the first we're here about this morning. We had many meetings with Sally, and very respectable lady, a very respectable manager, and again, we wish her the best. Thank you.
Sarah, just to follow up, the MTA has an open job posting for a chief operating officer for New York City Transit.
Yes.
That's new. Can you comment on that? What they'll
Yes.
be doing? And
What I was trying to go at was your suggestion that the acting chief operating officer would be running the agency, which is not something we've ever talked about. So several weeks ago, we appointed Patrick Warren, who is the chief safety officer at MTA, to be the acting COO of Transit. Couple things about Transit: 54,000 person 54,000 person organization of MTA, 74,000 people. I don't know about you, but I will take all the experienced help I can get in running a 54,000 person company. Okay, so I was thrilled that Pat was willing to join the Transit team and to help guide us through the coming months. It makes sense for a company of our size to have a chief operating officer. And so we're also, we put him in as acting, and we're also conducting a search. We also need a VP of Subways. We also need a president of buses. We also need someone to run transit. So I'm happy to have a longer conversation about the org chart. I don't know if everybody else wants to hear that too, but we can go all day on that. Any other questions?
This is for Craig. Can you just bring us up to speed with OMNY on buses? Initially it was rolled out in Staten Island, but just bring us up to speed with where things stand now on OMNY and buses, and is it citywide yet? And if not, where will it be?
Oh, sure. So as you just said, OMNY is on all buses in Staten Island. It's rolling out currently on all buses in Manhattan, and we have an aggressive timeline that I think Al Poutre just presented to the board, where it will be on all buses by the end of this year.
A question for Craig, actually. Craig, in the last at the beginning of the pandemic, we were seeing the bus speeds were increasing because traffic was so low. I'm wondering if in the last few weeks you've seen traffic return and bus speeds decrease.
Sure. So I think at its height, bus speeds increased just shy of 20%, system-wide. And yes, as the reopening of New York has happened, we have seen a little bit of a degradation from that, but we're still up somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 15% system-wide.
You guys have fares returning in August, but you have gotten a lot of riders used to not paying the fare. What's your plan to get that turned around? And are you going to redeploy the Eagle team onto some select buses to enforce that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think people have gotten used to not paying the fare, but I think everyone understands that that was something we did on a very temporary basis in order to protect our operators. And so I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to anyone, particularly given our financial situation, that we need to go back to collecting the fare. So, we will be messaging aggressively to the ridership. We'll be reminding people. We'll be talking to all of you, asking you to remind riders in your stories and in the work that you're doing that fares are coming back and that it's time to start paying the fare again. And to your question about Eagle teams, I'm sure that those will be added again at some point, but we haven't made any decisions about it. Any other questions? Okay. Jose?
Hello. Do you suspect that bus ridership will remain at or close to the level of subway ridership as it has been, and some points even greater in the last few months? And if it is there any thinking to perhaps adding service on the buses, reconfiguring the schedule so that you can have better distancing on the buses?
Yeah, so I think that if anything, both the pandemic and the recovery from the pandemic and the reopening of the city have been unpredictable. Predictable in a way that the governor and the mayor have laid out really clearly what the next steps are, but unpredictable as riders come back and when people will feel comfortable returning to the system. And I think a big part of it is when big employers bring their folks back, right? So we've asked big employers to stagger the hours and stagger the days that the workforce is coming back. Many have complied. If that changes, we're going to end up, we're going to end up with a whole bunch of riders coming back all at once. So I like the way New York has gone about this. It's been very disciplined and strategic and staggered. I think it's hard to predict how many riders will flip from buses to subways or start doing both or come back to subways instead of buses. It's just a little too hard to say at this point. But as congestion increases in the city, I think you're going to start to see, unfortunately, as we know, a lot of folks go to the subways because they don't want to sit in traffic. And that's why, we're glad to be happy to be working with the city on the increase in the number of bus lanes and busways, because that's the only way we're going to be able to keep buses going as people come back.
Sarah, can you just elaborate?
Sorry, I missed half part of your question, I think. What was it? Oh,
Figuring the scheduling
sorry. Yep.
to create more distancing on the bus itself.
Yeah, so we remain open to adding service where we can, right? And we will, for example, we have sort of flexed additional buses to places where we're seeing crowding. I think that's the best approach that we've seen so far. It's the most effective one, but certainly Judy McLean and her team are constantly looking at where we should be changing the schedule or adding buses or adding new routes. And we'll continue to do that. Okay.
Sarah, can you bring us up to speed on the subway cars that were taken out of service because of the technical issue, and when might they be returning?
Sure, those are the R179s. So that fleet remains out of service while we continue our investigation and figure out next steps in terms of bringing those cars back. So I think we said about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, that we were going to convene a panel of folks who could come in, take a look at the cars and at the process that we've been through over the last couple of months, the series of issues that we've had, what our concerns are, what we've done to address those issues, and basically look at where we are with some fresh eyes. There are people at subways and at the MTA who have been in this procurement for 5, 6, 7 years at this point. I myself have only been deep into this for months, and I would like a fresh set of eyes on this at this point. So, look, it is troubling to have lost confidence after the number of incidents we've had. I don't think anyone thinks that we've got a problem with the entire fleet, but we need a path forward. And so we're convening these folks. I'd like to have them convened by next week to start to give us feedback on a path forward. Thank you all.